You've been a familiar face in boxing for many years. You've seen it all. What do you make of this current rise of British boxing that we are witnessing right now?
You know, it's a current rise. You know, the last 3-4 years. I think it may still be true right now. The UK has more world champions than any other country in the world. That's unbelievable. But British boxing has always been a red-hot sport with loyal fans. The crowd you're going to see Saturday night here at the O2, the sold-out 80,000 fans in attendance in Cardiff 10 days from now. It's going to be just another great event for these great British fans. And that's what seems to drive it. I mean, you know, social media, communications all around, give rise to people being able to see more fights. Young people see it. Here in the UK, they see what the fans are like, what the attendance is like, what the excitement and the energy is like. And it just gives these guys the incentive to go to the gyms in Manchester and Liverpool and London. And we've just seen a lot of great fighters especially over the last 5 years.
What do you think are the biggest differences when comparing to, let's say, the mid-90s to this current era of boxing?
Mid-90s were good. The heavyweight division, you know, the Klitschko started to dominate the sport, and you know, from like the late 90s on, Tyson had just, you know, at the mid-90s, Tyson had just left the sport as far as being the marquee undisputed heavyweight champion, and the heavyweight division drives the whole sport, basically. It gets the interest going. Like we have this fight with Dillian White and Lucas Brown. A great fight, but a great undercard to support it. And that really, you know, makes a big difference. Some of the undercard is going to be streamed live on Facebook. Well, in the 90s, we didn't have that. So there's a whole social media thing. There's cable networks that will show, like have a pay-per-view fight, they'll show 3-4 fights, but then you can see those other 3-4 fights that you couldn't before on a cable network or on streaming. And I think that, you know, helps getting the fans to be engaged with seeing younger fighters come up, then they become popular, they become champions, and that, I think that's the big difference, is social media and the total communications picture.
Like we've discussed, the sport is kind of gaining back its dominance. It may have already, maybe it does have it back. Do you still feel that there's room for growth in boxing?
Oh yeah, because we're seeing more and more popular and charismatic fighters. I think that's what it is, and that starts probably with Anthony Joshua. He seems to have the whole package. A gold medal winner, a guy that stays in shape all the time. He's gotten his youthful craziness that we all have when we're 18, 19, 20. That's behind him, and so as a young man, he's a great example for people to look up to and admire what he does and the kind of condition he stays in. And yeah, you never hear anything about AJ getting in trouble or at a nightclub, you know, some brawl or something. No, this is a great guy that people look up to, and that sort of is, you know, everything starts at the top. You know, they talk about in politics, they said, well, it's, you know, from the head down is where problems come from. Yeah, in this case, from the head down, which is AJ and the heavyweight title, that's all good for boxing.
What do you make of the current state of American boxing, U.S. boxing right now? Obviously, I guess the biggest news, one of the biggest news, is Canelo failing a drug test, and maybe a lack of stars somewhat. Obviously, Deontay Wilder just put on a great performance, but what would you say? How would you describe U.S. boxing at the moment?
I think it's doing well. I think it needs a little shot in the arm. I think you're right. They need a few more stars. We have Canelo and Triple G fighting each other. So somebody's going to lose, and that kind of like makes one guy rise to the top as far as stars go. The networks, the premium networks, Showtime and HBO, you know, they want to have guys that, like, every 8 weeks you want to see a big name fighter out there. The smaller divisions have some great fights, like these mini weights, bantamweights, flyweights. There's some really great fighters, but they don't have the ticket potential, the marketing value that welterweights, middleweights, up to heavyweights sort of do. But we do need stars, you're right. I think in the USA they need some stars. I mean, here in the UK you got Joshua Buatsi is an up-and-coming fighter, super middleweight, I believe, and just other names. The heavyweight division probably is looking as good internationally as it ever had. Povetkin is fighting underneath the main event next week. Great heavyweight, gold medal champion. AJ and Parker, Wilder in the States. Ortiz probably still has to be considered in the top 10 because he almost knocked out Wilder. And these two guys fighting here Saturday night, that's going to be a battle. I mean, you look at them up here at the press conference, they look calm and collected, but man, they can just, I think the judges can go home and the referee better learn how to count to 10. That's all you're going to need.
Finally, I have to ask this. What's your prediction for Joshua versus Parker?
Well, you know I can't make a prediction. I mean, that's not right. But I can predict we'll have a winner, we'll have a loser. I don't think it's going to end in a draw. How's that?
Michael Buffer, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.